Behind that face, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking. Nothing, precisely, deliberately nothing. That is the discipline, not the stillness of the body. Any man can stand still if you train him long enough. The discipline is the stillness of the mind, the ability to be present at your post without a single thought that does not belong there. Weight on both feet, rifle at the correct angle, eyes forward along the prescribed sightline, the processional east, the gilded arch, the flagstone seam at 14 paces. Everything else is background. Everything else is weather. I had been on post since 7:30. The summer civilian viewing day ran until 4. These are the hours when the public is admitted to the east forecourt, a broad stone terrace between the inner wing and the garden gate, open 6 times a year by charter. Families come. Tourists come. Retired civil servants come with their cameras and their sensible shoes, wanting a look at the household from the outside. Most of them are decent people. Most of them keep a respectful distance, read the signs, take their photographs from behind the cordon, and go home with something they can show their grandchildren. Most of them. I heard her before I saw her. A high, carrying voice, the voice of a woman accustomed to being listened to, who had never once had reason to lower it. She was moving through the public area with 3 companions, all of them dressed for somewhere more important than where they were. Her tone had the particular quality of someone performing for an audience she had brought with her rather than the one standing around her. "Now here," she said, loudly enough for the nearest cordon to hear clearly, "is the man we're all supposed to be impressed by." One of her companions laughed. "He doesn't move," she said. "They train them not to. You could light a fire under him and he'd stand there with that face." A pause. "It's quite a coat, though, very dramatic, very, what's the word, ornamental." I did not look at her. I did not adjust my angle. I tracked her in my peripheral vision with the same passive awareness I apply to any movement in the public zone, cataloging without reacting, the way you catalog weather. She was perhaps 30 feet from the cordon line, moving laterally along it with her group, using me as a backdrop for commentary. This happens. Not often, but it happens. A certain kind of person arrives at a post like mine and sees not a soldier but a prop. They see the bearskin and the tunic and the white gloves and the rifle, and they make a calculation, usually in the first 5 seconds, that what they are looking at is decorative, that it was designed for their benefit, that its function is to stand still and be looked at, and that this grants them a kind of ownership over the moment, a right to comment freely, because how could a decoration object? They are almost always wrong about everything except the coat. She moved closer. I heard the soft crunch of shoe leather on the forecourt stone, the click of a camera from one of her companions, and then her voice again, lower now but not lower enough. "A mannequin would be cheaper, and you could pose it." More laughter. I completed my turn at the northern marker, the brass pin set flush in the stone, worn smooth by 20 years of boot heels, and began my return line. 14 paces, eyes forward along the processional east, the gilded arch, the flagstone seam. On the 7th pace, she stepped into my lane. Not by accident. There is a difference between a person who wanders into a guard's march line without thinking and a person who does it on purpose, and I have learned to read that difference in the set of the shoulders, the slight forward lean, the half-smile directed back at the companions to confirm they are watching. She was standing 3 feet inside the cordon, directly on my line, feet planted, with the mild expectant look of someone who has made a point and is waiting for it to register. I adjusted my line by 2 feet and continued without pause. "Oh," she said to her companions, "he just went around me." She made it sound like a concession, as if I had acknowledged her by altering my path, as if the adjustment were a kind of deference. I reached the southern marker and turned. On the return pass she moved into the adjusted line, same planted feet, same expectant half-smile, same calculation. I adjusted again, 2 feet the other way, continued without pause. From behind the main cordon, I was aware of the tone of the crowd changing. The low murmur had tapered. There were perhaps 40 people on the forecourt at that moment, families, a school group near the garden gate, a scattering of individuals with cameras, and the particular quality of collective attention had shifted to the quality of collective attention that means something is happening that people have decided to watch. She was aware of it too. I could hear it in the way her voice pitched up slightly, freshened by the larger audience. On my next approach from the north, she stepped directly in front of me and put her hand flat on my chest. Not a grab, not a shove. A flat palm, fingers spread, pressed to the center of my tunic, with the calm confidence of someone who believed that the gesture would produce an effect, that I would halt, look at her, respond in some way that acknowledged she had done it. It was the gesture of a woman who had never in her adult life been refused acknowledgement. I completed the pace I was mid-stride on. Then the next. Her hand rode with the movement of my chest and then dropped away as I came to the end of my internal count and stopped on my own schedule, at the position I would have stopped at regardless, precisely as my training and my standing orders required. I stood, rifle at the correct angle, eyes forward. The forecourt was silent. I am often asked what I think about in moments like that. The honest answer is that I think about the job. I think about the angle of the rifle and the position of my feet and the prescribed sightline and the distance to the southern marker. I think about the next turn. I think about the weight of the bearskin and whether the chin strap is at the correct tension and the exact degree to which my right shoulder is rotated to the proper bearing. I think about the fact that in this uniform, on this post, I represent something that was here before I was born and will be here after I am gone, and that what I do in the next 10 seconds will be a reflection of that thing and not of me personally, and that this is exactly as it should be. I do not think about the woman with her hand on my chest. She is weather. I turned and resumed my line. Her hand had fallen away 2 paces back. I did not hear her speak. What I did hear on my 4th pace was an older man's voice, unhurried, conversational, pitched not for an audience but for one person. Quiet enough that I could only just catch it from my position. The voice of a man who has spent decades knowing exactly how loud to speak to make himself understood and no louder. I did not look, but I listened. "Forgive an old soldier for interrupting," the voice said. I couldn't help but notice. A pause. The woman said something. I couldn't make it out from the line. A polite deflection by the tone. "No, please," the voice said. "I only wanted to say one thing and then I'll leave you to your day." Another pause. "The man you just put your hand on, the one in the coat you called ornamental, do you know what he was doing 6 years ago this November?" I did not turn. I did not slow. I reached the southern marker and turned. And as I began the return line, I was aware that the woman had not moved from her position near the cordon, and that her companions had gone quiet, and that the older man was still beside her. "There was an action," the voice said, "in a corridor, not a place you would have read about. It was never reported, never made public, and the file is still sealed. 6 men went into that corridor. 1 came out. He held it for 6 hours on 2 wounds because the position had to be held, and because he was the only one left to hold it, and because no order was given to fall back, and therefore he did not fall back. I was at the northern marker. I turned. The coat," the voice said, "is not ornamental. The coat is what they give a man like that to wear when they put him in front of people who need to believe that order and duty and restraint are still real things in the world. The coat is the most serious thing on this forecourt, and the man inside it is the most serious man most of the people standing here will ever be within 10 feet of, without knowing it." I was 6 paces into the return line. I heard nothing else from the woman's direction. No reply, no laugh, no carrying voice reestablishing its authority over the moment. On my next pass I marked, in my peripheral vision, that the space where she had been standing was empty. Her companions had moved back toward the garden gate. The older man was standing alone near the cordon, hands clasped behind his back, watching me with the steady attention of someone who knows what they are looking at and does not need to say so. He was wearing a civilian blazer with a small regimental pin at the lapel, old style, the kind you stop wearing publicly after you leave service unless you earn the right to keep wearing it. I clocked it on the third pass. A Keldrath first, if I was reading the pin correctly. Retired rank by the cut of the man, the way he stood, the economy of the whole posture. Long out of uniform, but the uniform had never entirely left him. He stayed for another 20 minutes. He watched with his hands behind his back and said nothing more to anyone. When he left, he did not wave or nod or make any gesture toward me. He simply turned and walked back toward the public entrance with the unhurried stride of a man who has completed what he came to do. I finished the watch at 4 o'clock, changed out, signed the duty log, handed the post to Corporal Fennick for the evening stand-down, walked back through the inner corridor and hung up the bearskin and checked the rifle into the armory, and that was the end of it. I did not think about the woman on the forecourt. She was not worth thinking about, not because she had been cruel or stupid. She had been neither exactly. She had simply been careless, the way people are careless with things they have decided are not real, but because she was not the point. The point, as it always is the post. You stand the post because it is there to be stood. You hold the line because the line is there to be held. You maintain the discipline not because anyone is watching and not because anyone will thank you for it, but because the discipline is the thing itself, the whole of it, the reason and the act and the proof all combined into one. On the days when no one tests you, the discipline is its own reward. On the days when someone does test you, the discipline is its own answer. The woman had wanted something from me. A flinch, a reaction, an acknowledgement that she had reached through the uniform and found a man who could be rattled. She had wanted to confirm for herself and her companions that the whole formal structure of the post, the coat, the bearskin, the rifle, the measured pace, was a performance, and that if you pressed on it the right way it would admit that. It would not because I was performing, because I was not. There is nothing to press on. There is no gap between the man and the post. After enough years, after enough of what the years contain, they become the same thing. The discipline is not a layer you put on in the morning and take off at night. It is what you are. Quiet and still and present and ready, and entirely without need of her acknowledgement or anyone else's. I do not know the old soldier's name. I never will. He would not have wanted me to. But I know what he did, and I know why he did it. Not for me. I did not need it. He did it because he was the only man on that forecourt who knew what he was looking at, and he decided quietly, without drama, that the record ought to be set straight. That is its own kind of discipline, the kind that lasts. The kind that does not need to be told.